This video will cover the SQL statements needed to create a table. If you look at the MySQL reference manual, you'll see quite a few variations on the syntax for the CreateTable command. The first variation in the reference manual is this one. Now for our work in our class, we don't need all those options, so I've trimmed that definition down to what we need to focus on. We have the keywords CreateTable, then a table name that we supply, and then the definition statements for the table. That's where we define the attribute and keys for the table. In your homework, I've supplied one CreateTable statement for you, and that's for the employee table. And here's the statement. Okay, we start the statement with the keywords CreateTable, then we give it the table name, and in this case it's employee, and then we have an open parentheses, and then the rest of these statements, our clauses, are all how we define our table, define the employee table. Okay. First thing we have after that open parenthesis is each of the attributes for the employee table. This probably looks somewhat familiar to you, as it's similar to what you did when creating the company ERD. Okay. You have to give it an attribute name or a column name, the data type, and then if there's any special things like not null. Okay. I'd like you to notice the use of case and spacing here. It's very important that you be consistent in your use of both. Keywords should always be uppercase, and use of supplied words like the table name employee should either be lowercase or camel case. To the best of your ability, you should also use spacing to line up the parts of the clauses. Both the proper use of case and spacing allow for your code to be read a lot easier. Also take note that the clauses within the parentheses are separated by commas. Okay. These commas, that's their purpose, is to separate the clauses. So we have at the very top the F name, varchar, not null, comma. Then the middle initial, varchar, not null, comma, and on down. But also notice that the very last clause, well, we're not separating it for anything, so there's no comma after the last clause in this statement. It just is employee SSN, and then the close parentheses for the definition. All right. Something in this that might be a little new to you, though, is the use of the constraint clauses there at the end. All right. The first clause establishes our primary key for this table, and the second clause creates a foreign key to the department table. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at these in a little more detail now. We're going to start with a primary key clause first. And here's the syntax for it. Okay, we have the keyword constraint, followed by a symbol, then the keyword's primary key, and then the index columns, okay, which are actually the columns that are the primary key. Okay, the symbol that we use here is a unique name given to the primary key. This is similar to what you did in the RDs for the foreign keys. I usually use an abbreviation of the table name followed by the capital letters PK. About the only time you're ever going to see this name in the future is if there's an error with your database, specifically with this primary key. That's not very common. After the symbol comes the keyword's primary key and an open parenthesis. Now within this parentheses we list the attributes to make up the primary key separated by a comma. If there's only one attribute, you have one name in there. If you have two attributes, you have both names inside this. All right, now let's go ahead and look at the employee table and how we establish the primary key for it. When you code the statements for your homework, you're going to be coding tables with single attribute primary keys and composite keys. Okay? In this case, it was a single key. All right? And also take note that we only have one primary key clause in this. That's all a table can have, is just one primary key. Now let's go ahead and look at the foreign key clause. We're going to look at its syntax first. We have a constraint with a symbol, foreign key. The index column name is the name in this table that's foreign key. Then we have the keyword references, the table we're pointing to, and the primary key of the table we're pointing to. Okay. The symbol will be something similar to what you did when you created the RDs. I normally try to have the abbreviation of both tables followed by the capital letters FK. Index name that follows the foreign key keywords. Now that's the name of the attribute that's the foreign key. It must have already been created. Okay, the table it has, that attribute needs to be in the CreateTable statement. After the keyword references, we've got that table we're pointing to, and then in parentheses, that index column name is the primary key of the table we're pointing to. Okay. Within the homework file, we've got one foreign key defined in the employee table. Okay, and this is for the supervisory relationship, which is the recursive relationship in that table. I gave the foreign key a name of EMP super in capital FK. Right. The attribute in this table its foreign key is super SSN. Okay. You can see that we already defined super SSN in a previous clause. Okay. The table being referenced or pointed to by super SSN is the employee table, and the primary key for that table is SSN. Take note that there's a space between the last E in employee and the open parentheses. You need to have that there or you're going to get an error message in your statement. Well, one thing you might have noticed, I mean, that's the end of defining that foreign key, but where's the foreign key pointing to the department table? You know, the employee table with the D node pointing to the department table D number. That isn't in here. Why do you think that is? Well, the reason it's not there is because we're defining the employee table first, and at this time the department table doesn't exist, so we cannot create that foreign key. We need it though, so how do we add it? Well, take a further look down in the homework file and you'll see an alter table statement. And for our purposes, the alter table statement is very similar to the foreign key constraint. We name the table we want to alter. Okay? Use keyword add to let MySQL know that we're going to be adding a constraint, and then the rest of the clause is just like the foreign key constraints clause in the CreateTables statement. You should notice that this alter table statement is placed in the file after the point where you'll be creating the department table. This placement ensures that the table and primary key that dnode points to actually exists. Well, that wraps up this video. The next video will discuss how to insert data into a table.